Hello, Dorothy.
Hi, Amy.
I first want to say thank you. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to sit with me and allow me to help share your story and what you've been called to do in life and who you are and what your project is and just helping you to share your perspective in general. So I first want to say thank you.
Oh, Amy, I'm honored to be here with you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you. When I first decided to do this project of highlighting various women who are giving back to the community, I knew that for the very first person that I wanted to sit down with, I wanted to be someone that I personally knew, and then not only that, someone who I felt had really taken their lives and used it as an example of service. And so naturally, when I think about who that is in terms of a person who just exemplifies God's service to this world, I think that's you. So I'm honored to honor you. Thank you. So we'll just jump right into it, in terms of the interview. I first just wanted to allow people to get a sense of who you are, just personally, who Dorothy Wellington is, to kind of share your story personally in terms of your background. So if you don't mind maybe taking a few moments just to let everyone know who you are and what your story is.
Well, it won't take them very long to figure out. I'm from the country.
All
and
right.
My family, I was born in Crockett, Texas, a little country town. They say it's just a little dot on the map. And my family migrated to Arizona when I was about a year old. And so really I feel like a native of Phoenix, Arizona, but minus a couple of months that that they came from Crockett, Texas, to work the cotton fields out here. And they said that picking cotton, Arizona paid a lot more than they did in Texas, and that what got them here. But so we lived in Stanfield, Arizona, around Casa Grande, and the last place where I grew up on the farm with chickens and pigs and cows and horses was in Coolidge. And I graduated from Coolidge High School, and in my senior year I became engaged.
Okay.
I can't even imagine that now, but I was engaged. That was the best thing that ever happened, better than apple pie. I was engaged to be married. But something happened. My boyfriend at that time had just spent a year in Vietnam. I planned the wedding, and when he got back in August of 1968, we got married. And unfortunately, I left a home that was protected and one of love to, he ended up being mentally ill, drug addictions, and all the things that our military faced. I went through at that time. I went through a lot of physical abuse, a lot of emotional abuse. When I got out of that marriage, my self-esteem was under the ground because he would continually tell me what a horrible woman that I was, along with all the physical abuse, to the point of one day he tried to choke me to death. And I knew it was nobody but God. It was just him and me and a baby in the house. And I remember crying and not being able to breathe, and for some reason he let me up. And I know that was nobody but God. So I want to tell women too that I married at 18, young, and had seen my family go through hardships and difficulties. So I thought what I was going through with him, well, it's a difficult marriage. You just hang in there, everything is going to be okay. But I just wanted to tell women too that if you're going through any type of physical abuse, emotional, psychological, that's not marital problems. That's he's committing legal acts against you, illegal acts against you, and they're crimes. And so you need to get out. But I stayed there until I was pregnant. Even after he tried to kill me that day, I still stayed there. But it got so bad emotionally, I was a basket case. And when I was pregnant with my second child, I then went back to Coolidge to live with Grandma and Grandpa. Let them take care of me through this. Then I started college at Central Arizona College, And then now I have 2 children. So I said, well, I'll make things better. I'll get a college degree. But after a year, more financial problems, being a single parent, and I had to drop out. I completed my freshman year, then I dropped out and got a full-time job. Because that's what you do. You take care of the babies. And so I said, this school thing isn't working. And then my car that I was using, I have an old car, it broke down. And so I said, no. So it was God's timing for me and the kids. In the midst of that time, I started having medical problems too. So at age 22, I was diagnosed with an overactive thyroid gland. So then I had surgery, had most of that removed. So then there was the supplement. I'm still on supplements today and for the rest of my life with that. So I went through a lot of, then 1979, I married again, and that ended up in divorce, more financial hardships. Now I'm a single parent of 3, but they were all blessings. Each one of my kids were gifts from those broken marriages and the suffering, and a lot of those quiet tears, I call those silent tears. You cry that nobody else can see. And I went through that, but God was always with me, and I believe that each one of those kids, I was to give birth to them, and they were to be a part of my life. And I'm so grateful because it's like God covered them, that they're not the result of my suffering, but they're the result of my joy that I had in life and bringing them into the world and raising them. And but that's a little bit about my background.
Oh, wow, Dorothy, I had no clue either. How do you think the pain and the suffering that you experienced maybe correlates in some way even to what you've been called to do? And when I say what you've been called to do, I mean generally speaking, in terms of the things that you've done even prior to your most current project, because I know you've lived a life of service. Do you think that pain and suffering maybe comes together in that in some way, whether it's to provide perspective or whatever? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely believe that, because now I don't believe God doesn't give us suffering. God didn't have me to get into marriage, to get divorced, and go through all those different things that I went to. But God, when we are there, if we yield to the goodness that comes out of it, God is there. He's always there. But He'll turn the strength that we gain for what He's called us to do in life. Because if I didn't survive those things, if I didn't learn how to still move forward one step, no matter how dark that one step in front of the other, I would have been more weak in trying to encourage other people. Because as people on the street, they can see right through you. But if I tell someone something, you know, I have somewhat idea what you're going through, they can feel, they can sense that from me. So most definitely, God turns those things to be used for our good. He doesn't bring them upon us, but He did turn those things around for us to be strength in the calling that He has on our lives.
That's beautiful, Dorothy. That's beautiful. So with that, what do you think is your purpose in this world? Why do you think God created you here, specifically you, for you, what you're supposed to give to the world?
I believe the calling that He has me is innate. I was born with it. And I call this, I say, I have a holy imagination. And I imagine myself being in heaven, you know, talking to God. And He told me, He said, you know, He said, I got a mission for you. I got an assignment for you. Now, you're going to go to earth, and it's up to you to accept it. You're going to go to earth, and you're going to be born of a family from Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Craig Jr. You're going to have a happy childhood. But as you grow older, you're going to go through some difficult times. But I'm going to be always with you. But I'm going to give you a compassion for others. And that compassion that you have for others will lead them to me. And He said, you're going to be okay because I'm going to be with you. So I believe that when I came to earth, you know, when I was born, it was already inside of me. It's innate. I believe our callings are innate. But we have to accept it. Like I said, God said, it's up to you to accept it. I'm not, you have to give us all the detail. Well, see, if He gave us too many details, we're going to say, no, I ain't going there. But He gave me enough. He said, you're going to go through some hardship, but I will be with you. And then the compassion that I get in your heart for others will lead them to me.
Oh, I love it. What do you think are some of the reasons that stop people from listening to that call and answering that call? Because I so agree with you. I think that we all have some kind of purpose. You know, the conversation. I'm so in agreement with you on the conversation. I love the way that you describe that conversation, and I totally in agreement with you as to how that conversation takes place prior to us incarnating, so to speak, here on earth.
Yes.
And what do you think stops us, though, if we all have this purpose that God has placed inside of all of us? What do you think stops some of us from being able to really hear or answer the call? What are your thoughts on that?
I believe the stronghold is fear.
Mm.
It's just fear and our value that we have in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we limit what we sense to do to our own ability. Everything that I have ever done, I didn't step out and say, this is what I'm going to do. It's like, because of God, I can do this. And I'm going to try this. I'm going to fail it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again. Because the first thing you have to get confirmed in your spirit, is this God speaking to me? Is this, and if it's God, Dr. Martin Luther King is one that I admire greatly, because I seen him stick to his values, stick with what he felt in his heart, and he did not change. Because sometimes, well, most of the time, change doesn't come quickly. But when you look at his life, it wasn't like I'm going to be a civil rights leader and overnight it happened, or the next week. It took years. Even after his death, we're still evolving from that. So I look at him and say, you know what? He had to step out to see God was with him.
Yes.
You have to let go of looking within your own self to do it, and not be afraid to fail, because the positive to success is equal to the failures to success. You have to be willing to fail in order to succeed. And a lot of people, they don't want to fail. I want to look good in the public. I want to show people this, and I want to show people that. It doesn't work that way. You got to be willing to fail. You got to sometimes be willing to look stupid. You know, I'm going out here with nothing,
with that.
and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. Well, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yes.
But inside, there's that little strength that you know that comes from God. But people, they're afraid, and then they look too much to themselves to see these great visions and dreams and businesses accomplished.
Yes. Let me ask you this. I was going to save this question for later on, but I feel compelled to ask it now. How do you define God? How do you define God? It just feels like that's something we should naturally go into.
Yeah, because
right
I'll
now.
be using him every once in a while. You can use God.
Yes. How
I
do you define
believe
it?
God is the almighty creator of everything known and unknown. I believe the wisdom of mankind since the very beginning can barely feel the bottom of a thimble when compared to God. So he is the creator of everything known and unknown, and he is an infinite spirit that cannot be measured. You know, we're finite, he's infinite. There's no way you can measure God. There's no way you can measure him. I believe, I love 3 little verses, you know, in the Bible. One says that God is love, and I believe we have that love of him through Christ. Number 2, it says that God is spirit, and his spirit is resident in all of us. And I love number 3. And these are all in the Bible. 3 words. God is love, God is spirit, God is light. And in Genesis it said that God spoke to a dark earth and he said, let there be light. And there was light. And for me, the spirit of God, the light of God exploded around all the earth, and we're filled with this light.
Oh, yes.
So, in my own little simple way, that's how I define God.
Oh, I love it. And part of our service in this world, do you feel like that's a piece of his light?
Oh, yes. Yes, most definitely. Because there's still light and darkness, good and evil in the world.
Yes.
And God's light is greater, and we need to know that. Because when we hear of darkness, we hear of horrors of wars and rumors of wars and bombings and sicknesses and diseases, you would think that all of those ills and darkness and evil are greater than light. But once you get to know him and read a little bit more about who he is and what he does in the earth, light surpasses anything of all of that chaos that we have. So it's an encouragement to know that light is always greater than darkness and the evils that we even hear about today in the world.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you for sharing that. I just felt compelled that we needed to have that discussion also here in this moment to talk about, you know, how our life stories and what we're called to do and our missions in life come together of a force much greater than ourselves. So thank you for sharing that with me. Why is it you decided to get involved in service? Why did you decide to go that route in general? I mean, I know we were talking about in terms of the call. Was there a specific moment in your life, do you think, that you could attach to that one call, or what do you think, just in general?
Yes, I think I was born, you know, to care for others. And I remember as a young teenager, I heard that the kids in our neighborhood, they were having, you know, they had bad report cards. I said, what is kids doing with bad report cards? That should not be. So what I did, Amy, I started a reading circle.
Oh, wow.
I loved Romper Room growing up. You remember Romper Room, but I'm a lot older. So I loved Romper Room. So I said, well, they need to learn more about reading. I could have been 15, you know. And so I started a reading circle in our little front yard of these kids. Now, it didn't last very long, because I had great zeal, but I couldn't put together a community project at 15. But I noticed that whenever I was giving to others, I was the most happiest, I was the most fulfilled. And it wasn't based on the paycheck, it wasn't based on what I could receive back. I felt like if I could turn a frown into a smile, I felt so happy. And it didn't make no difference whether they could give back to me or not. I was happiest when I was giving to others. And so it just kept on evolving through, you know, my field of areas of employment, and then from establishing a church, you know, in the early 1990s, to a counseling agency, to working with the poor. No matter what I did, every job or every activity always involved helping people to be happier than they were.
Awesome. And if you could share with us some more about one or two or whatever you feel like sharing in terms of your service projects.
Yes, in October of 2006, it was an outreach that God brought to me. I didn't go out seeking poor and homeless people, even though I worked with people low income, people who were hurt, but never those right on the street. I did a workshop for women, and it was in October, Domestic Violence Month, and we were having a luncheon, and we didn't fill up the chairs. We had lots of food left over, and one of the ladies who had been working with the homeless in downtown Phoenix, she said, Dorothy, a lot of homeless people come to this library. Can they come up to eat? And I said, yes. And we had 4 men that came up, and I remember feeling ecstatic. And I asked them, I said, now I'm going to be speaking. I said, would you stay to listen? I said, yes. And so the next month, God said, do it again. And we just kept growing and growing and growing till we reached over 100 people in that library, and they kicked us out. So really, that's how I got involved in working with the poor and homeless. But I'll never forget the passion that I felt for them. It is if I had walked the street with them. But it was what God imparted into me, that I could feel what they were feeling, and that was that empathy along with the compassion. And so I've been there now 8 years out there, helping them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's called the Streets of Gold Leadership.
We have the once a month church, and that meets on the last Sunday of the month, and I do inspirational teaching. We give a meal because their stomachs are hungry. I learned this, I'm not a food bank, but when I teach, their bellies are hungry, so we have a meal. And they need to refresh their clothing, so we give the nicest clothes that I've got through donations. The second program I have is called the Streets of Gold Leadership Program. And Amy, you won't believe this, nobody does. When we have the funding, we take them to a restaurant.
All right.
We pick them up at the park, dust the grass off of them, and if I have some shirts, I'll give them a clean shirt, and the women too, and we go to a restaurant. Because I want to take them out of that environment to show them that they're more than their circumstances. And then we celebrate all the holidays, and I bless them with their families too, with children and grandchildren, Christmas and Christmas toys, Easter baskets, Thanksgiving. We did a grand meal out there in the park for Thanksgiving, and we just now started something called the Good Shoe Drive campaign. And so once a year now, I'm asking people to give good shoes because the shoes on their feet don't look too good. So we do things like that. And one day, I got deep in my heart, I haven't gave it up yet. I want an overnight healing retreat for them.
Could you repeat that? You would like
an overnight healing retreat.
Oh,
I'd actually like to take them from Phoenix, and I already got a spiritual site out of Phoenix to take them for overnight healing retreat, because I know healing starts from the inside first, and so clothing and all the natural things we have, it does not bring healing on the inside. And what I do, I refresh them to feel a little bit better, but I know deep down change starts from within. So I have in my mind one day to have an overnight retreat for a good number of them.
That's wonderful. So that's your vision for this project?
Yes.
That's wonderful. So if other people would like to contribute to this vision, in what way could they be able to do that?
Yes, on my website, I have a page it's called Partners to Superstars, and no one's ever heard of that before. When we go out there, I say, "Good morning, superstars of the Most High God." Again, God gave me that name because when you get among them, you hear their stories, and they still come on that Sunday, or they come to go with us to the restaurant. They have battled survival. They battle survival. And God say that makes them a superstar in His heart, because they're surviving every day through obstacles and hardships, through sicknesses, disease, through addictions, and yet they get up that next day and they try it again. So they are superstars.
That's right. So they could find the project on your Facebook page.
It's just DorothyWellingtonMinistries.com, and when it says Partner to Superstars, you're helping to give support to our programs and our activities that I work to work with them from the inside, that they are superstars, and then I inspire them to reach their own plans and goals. Because I use the word inspiration, because I'm not going to do it for them. I'm to inspire them. They make the phone calls for services. They go and set up appointments. They check this out. And at the Streets of Gold, what I found in the first years of being out there, a lot of the services are outdated, but they only take 10 people that day. And I try to knock down those barriers in that meeting to let them know where they can get the best services, who has a decent reputation in dealing with the poor and the homeless. And so then they get motivation to go out and get things for themselves. And I'm not doing it for them, they're doing it. And if they do it for themselves, it's long lasting.
Okay. Good deal. What do you think are the 3 things in working with the homeless population? What are 3 things that you would say are the biggest misconceptions that people have about homelessness and how people become homeless?
I would say the misconceptions are those people, meaning that I'm not one of them. And I, in my own life, I came so close to being homeless. And in one relationship I was in, I was without a place to stay for 3 weeks, but I had a family member I stayed with. Sometimes they don't have that. Through the downfall of our economy in 2008, a lot of people who had money, who had wealth, who had everything going for them, lost everything. So when you call them those people, that homeless person's on the inside of you. The other misconception is that they can change if they want to. I don't want to help them. They're well able-bodied people. They can get out if they want to. You don't know what's behind that face. It could be a large percentage are mentally ill. There is substance abuse and physical abilities. I learned too, being out there, some of them have applied for Social Security disability and denied. They go through appeals and you're going through, but they have no money, they have nothing. So when you judge them and say they're well-bodied, they appear to be well-bodied, but you don't know what's behind that face or those dirty clothes. And the other thing is that people think that panhandling is a rich man's job. And in Phoenix, I would say there's a little over 5,000 people in the Phoenix Valley that are homeless. Some can get overnight shelter, especially some of the families, but there's over 5,000 people that they have documented that are homeless. So if panhandling was really a rich man's scheme, why aren't thousands on our street corners, panhandling? You see one here, this one off the freeway. You can probably count how many people are panhandling. But they think panhandling, well, I'm not going to help them. They make a lot of money doing that. No, that's definitely not the truth.
What do you think then with that, and namely particularly with your work in homelessness, what are some things that, I know those are some of the biggest misconceptions, what are some things that you have personally learned, whether it's with this project or other projects as it relates to service and giving back? Just three just broad things that you would say that have been your biggest lessons.
I've learned that all of us are the same. All people are created equal. Not one person, not even the President of the United States, is any different from the lowest and the bottom. We have different jobs, but no one has more value than another person. Another thing that I've learned is that we all need each other. We all need each other. No person is an island. And the other thing is give and expect nothing in return. And that's a hard one for some people, to give and expect nothing in return. And I say because God will take care of you according to his laws and principles. So if you give with the motive, I'm going to see what they're going to do with the dollar I gave them, I'm going to see what this program or this organization is going to do. You need to know in your heart that God has placed in your heart to give, and you have to let it go. You're not the judge after that. But if you give, you're blessed not because you gave to that person, but according to God's laws, and God has principles that he will turn around and bless you. But if you give with no motive, but to give and to bless that you feel in your heart, you'll be blessed because God's laws and principles says you would. But to give and expect nothing in return.
Yes, it'll be returned to you in whatever capacity it's supposed to. But if you're giving expecting something, that's not true giving.
It's definitely not a gift of giving.
Yes, yes, okay. And what do you think on a personal side, but also thinking about your vision as well? Maybe they're together, maybe they're separate. You share with us, what is the legacy that Dorothy Wellington is to leave here? What is your legacy? What's the imprint you want to make on this world?
I would say to treat the poor and the needy as you would Jesus. To see Jesus as the poor, because it's written and he describes that in talking to his disciples, he was asking, he said, when did you clothe me? When did you visit me when I was sick? When did you go to the prisons? When did you give me food when I was hungry? And the disciple was saying, like, we ain't seen that in you. And he said, yes. When you give to these, you have given unto me. And I had a t-shirt once and it said, Jesus is the poor. And people don't like to hear that because they think Jesus is some rich man with $1 million walking the face of the earth. Whenever he had a need, it was supplied, but he didn't have $1 million in his bank. Whenever he had a need, whenever others had a need, it was taken care of. But Jesus identified himself with the poor. So I would say for people to see Jesus as the poor and for the poor to have priority. I believe in every budget in politics, from federal to local to city, state. I believe the poor needs to be a priority. But it's at the bottom or it doesn't exist at all. Churches, number one budget should be to give, especially through Christianity, if you believe what Jesus said, that when you've given unto the poor, you've given unto him, that your alms account, your giving account to the poor and the needy should have number one priority. And I believe if we adapt more of that attitude that Jesus is the poor and the poor and the homeless should have top priority, I believe we do very well.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do want to shift gears some here and get your perspective on women and womanhood. And I think in order to be able to segue into that, I still would like to keep with our topic of homelessness, if we could start there, and get your perspective on women as it relates to homelessness. And how is it that women, from what you've seen so far, how do women come into that space, generally speaking?
It was very hurting to see women out there on the street. Mm-hmm. Now, most of my population over these eight years, it's always been about 80% men, 20% women. But it hurts so deeply when you see those women out there. You rarely see children because CPS will pick them up in a minute. But women are out there from domestic violence, also from broken family relationships. They don't have any place to go. There's some addictions out there. They have drug abuse and substance abuse issues also. But the broken relationships is like one of the biggest stuff. If you have some place to go, a woman's not going to be on the street. I used to see women, they would come to the park because they trusted me. They'd come with bruises where they've been beaten in their face, prostitution, all these types of things. But I believe relationships is the broken and lost relationships with their love partner, their husbands, and family. Because remember I said I would have been homeless, but my sister and my brother-in-law took me and my child in. And if you don't have that, women are out there in the homeless part of the homeless population.
Okay. And then getting to even on a more deeper root level of that, in speaking of the relationships, what do you think individually with a woman, do you think are some of the causes that get women to a place of entering into negative relationships or substance abuse or whatever it may be, whatever the thing is? What do you think are some of those root causes that get us to those spaces?
I believe it's how we see ourselves on the inside. I know there's an awful lot, that could be covered, but one of the things that's close to my heart, especially because I'm a victim of domestic violence, I'm a victim of a man telling me, and remember, I'm this little skinny little girl that came out of the country. In fact, I was a virgin when I got married. I knew nothing, but he beated me emotionally and mentally that I was nothing, that I was like the scum of the earth. I was just this terrible person. And pretty soon, it's not true. You start believing those things. Mm-hmm. And I believe the thing that we have today, and I call it our value as women have been distorted. Our bodies, the exploitation of the female body, I believe is what lessening women to their full potential, because when we have so much simulated sex in our music videos, nudity and near nudity, TV, movies, and all of this. Now this is me, I believe it lets women think that their power is in our physical bodies. Who looks the best? Who has the best figure? Who got back to their shape after 6 weeks after a baby was born? My oldest is 45 and I'm still trying to get back into shape. But it's as if power is in this outer shell. Now God, we are some beautiful creatures. Don't get me wrong, we are beautiful. Women are fantastic to look at, but that's not where our power is from. But if we start believing, and these from little girls on, then the power is how we dress, how we look, and all this, it gets distorted. And you can't get power that way. One thing, we're getting older every year. If your power is who you were and what you looked like when you was 20, where's your power at? It's gone. So it's easy to be overtaken by a man. It's easy to put up with low-income jobs. It's much easier not to strive for higher education. It's easier to stay in a low-income area.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I found out being out there when we was talking about the women in poverty and homelessness, this one lady in Lisa Moore that was on disability, and she had a couple of children. And with the income that they have, they can only live in slum Lord neighborhoods. So you got to really know that you are a powerful person on the inside to say, you know what, me and my kids are not going to stay here anymore. We're not going to put up with these slum landlords. If you don't have that power on the inside, but you're looking on the outside as if a $500 pair of shoes give you power, you know, you're always, and I see women, like, it makes us steady reaching for something, like reaching and never arriving, seeing a pot of gold and never be able to get there. It's the power that we really are that God put in us, that power, but we don't know how to find it because we're looking and trying to get it on the outside.
I love that.
And it's a distortion.
Yes.
And what it does, it affects every area in our life. Because when you have belittled yourself to strength being on your outer appearance, it's going to stop you every time you make a step somewhere.
Oh, yes. I love how you put that. I was reading a book, A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and she defines the ego as a hallucination. You know, it's an illusion. You know, it's not something that's real. You know, the only thing that is real is love, you know, and God. And fear is a part of the ego and that great hallucination. And so when you talk about us defining ourselves on the outside, that's kind of what that reminds me of, is us identifying with the illusion, with what's not really real. So what do you think then is our feminine power, our core essence of who we are that makes us the feminine, most powerful creatures here? What is that? Where does that power come from?
I believe it comes from our source, you know, and our source is God. And God is all power. And so if God is not our source as women, we're going to look for something else to be our source, and it's not strong enough to be a rescue, a help, and to a need. I believe women are an essential part of the earth. You know, we're not subservient to man in any way, shape, or form. In fact, Amy, I love this Bible verses in Genesis, and you know God called both of us, male and female, man. Nobody talks about that, but he called us both man. And excuse me, the NIV version of the Bible said that God called us both Adam. Wouldn't that knock a lot of men off their pedestal to know we were, in God's eyes, we were both called man, or in another translation, we were both called Adam, equal. We are equal partners to the creation and evolution of the earth. But then Adam named his wife Eve, the mother of children. It didn't come from God. That was something Adam did. So once you realize that, you're just as equal, and you're an essential part of the evolution of earth. You're not an afterthought of God. God seen that we were all equal. And women are powerful energies in the world. I say this, that wherever women are not allowed to fulfill their call and purpose and positions in life, that nation or country is weak. Because a nation or country cannot be everything that it wants to be when women are not free to take on the jobs and fulfill the things that they feel in their heart. That country is weak.
What do you think then, with that in mind, what do you think? I'm of the opinion, I think, you know, we all have this unique calling on our lives, and I think there are certain things that God gave each gender, so to speak, that that are supposed to be here and be fulfilled in terms of what his greater grand scheme of things may be. And I hate to use the term job, but for lack of a better term, what role is it? You know, if we had to wrap us all up, what are the gifts, do you think, that women provide and bring to, whether it's our families, whether it's the community, whether it's our work environment, organizations? What gifts is it that we as women, if we really tap into what those gifts are that God uniquely gave us, we could bring magnificence to those respective places, what would you say they are?
I believe that male and female are a lot alike, but there are unique differences. I believe that women, we're more intuitive. I believe we have more effective means of communication. We can communicate our feelings and beliefs, our feelings and emotions a lot more effective. I believe that we have a different side view and looking at problems, and that's what I mean. When you take that out of the equation, everything is missing, can't be fulfilled to its best. I believe that we are needed. Women jobs, I believe they can be anything they want to be. We are beyond, we can go beyond as not belittling motherhood, as not belittling being a wife or a homemaker and things like that in the home. But women can be anything. At one time, we could be only midwives. Now we're nurses, and now we're doctors. Women, I agree during World War I and II that women made uniforms. You know, they sewed and stitched. Not only can we make uniforms, we're now in wars, and we're wearing uniforms. I came learning in high school, like being in a clerical pool, you know, typing and secretarial. Now we're CEOs of corporations. So women can be, and women's jobs, we're expanding. We're constantly expanding. And so women can be any job, anything they want to be. But I think it's so important for them to know that that's a view from heaven, that you can be and do anything you want to be, and there's no stopping you.
Yes. Well, and I love that. Thank you. How do you think that we as women can be able to support one another more? I think sometimes we are our greatest sisters, and sometimes we can be our own worst enemies.
Yeah.
You know, and there again, some of that goes back to some of the things you've already discussed in terms of our own self-worth, self-value, things along those lines. And I think that kind of plays a dynamic in how we can interact with one another sometimes. But in terms of bringing the sisterhood together more, how could women support one another more in your perspective?
I think, you know, sometimes the things that we're positive of can also be a weakness. And because we communicate a lot, you know, sometimes deeply with our feelings and emotion, that also means we can get hurt easily. And sometimes women, we hurt each other through our words or actions or things like that. And sometimes we don't realize how tender-hearted women are. You know, across the board, women are more tender-hearted. But I believe as women, we need to become more others-oriented. It's like, instead of, you know, especially networking groups, instead of like more, what can they do for me? Go in with an attitude and a change of heart. How can I help this lady? And we all can't do everything for a person who needs this or that, but just what can I do to help this person? And no matter how small it is, to be open to change from our ego to think more about how can I help other women. And then because of our sensitivity, and sometimes we're easily hurt, that Frozen movie, Let It Go, whatever hurts, disappointments, and disagreements that you may have felt about even a relative female or a friend or a co-worker, let it go. Just let it go, you know, and then make a decision that I'm going to be a helper. You know, because I believe that as we do this and we respond more to our callings and helping one another, it all helps the world to go around, helps the world to be a better place.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So with that in mind, then, I think we're about to close up, but with that in mind, I would like to ask you if you had any last words of wisdom. What words of wisdom would you give to women that they need to hear? What would be on your heart to share?
My mother died when I was 20 years old, and 2 weeks after April was born my first child. And she used to tell me all the time growing up, she said, be everything that you can be. And it was like, not just one thing. You know, my second granddaughter, we would be walking the mall, and one day she wanted to be a dentist. And I said, Kaylin, why you want to be a dentist? I want to wear a white coat, you know. Sometimes she likes fashion. Well, I said, well, you can be a dentist. What else you want to be? How often do we challenge our little girls with that? It's like, what do you want to be? It's like it's one thing. You might do one thing as a teenager, like when I told you, I wanted to have a reading circle. I wanted to be the romper room teacher, but that was only for that season. But each season of my life, I changed. I would be willing to grow. So I would just tell women, please be everything. If you was this for the past 5 years or 10 years, you can do something different. The brain is big. You know, it can hold a whole lot of information. It can have a whole lot of changing. You know, but be everything that you can be.
Be everything.
Yes.
That reminds me of the Shaka Khan and Whitney Houston song, I Am Every Woman.
Yes.
Hello, be everything.
Yes.
All right. Well, Dorothy, thank you so much.
Okay.
I have so enjoyed this. I always love communing with you and talking with you and just hearing your words of wisdom that you have. You have a lot to share. So I thank you. And again, please let everyone know how it is they can find your program if they wish to support.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. It's Dorothy Wellington Ministries.com. And if you're local, we can always use helping hands kind of on the ground. But if you are distant from us or not available, you know, there's always a way that you can become a partner to our superstars.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and your wisdom. So, till we meet again.
God bless you.
Thank you.